Hello and welcome to UC Santa Barbara's Virtual Parents and Family Weekend. My name is Fatima Venzer and you're joining us today for the presentation, Discovering 50 Great Public Land Destinations. And before I introduce our speaker today, there's just some reminders that I wanted to go over with you all. The first is that there is captioning available for this event. The next is that the presentation is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand on the Parents and Family Weekend website in 2 weeks. Attendees' cameras and microphones cannot be turned on. This is just for security purposes, nor can they chat with one another. Our presenter today encourages any questions that you have regarding public lands and the website that she'll be exploring today. So you can submit those and type those in using the Q&A box at either the top or the bottom of your screen. And if you have any general questions about the weekend of events and Parents and Family Weekend as a whole, feel free to submit those questions and you can email parent@ia.ucsb.edu or you can give us a call at 805-893-7382. And so now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Environmental Studies lecturer, Deborah Williams.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to meet you via Zoom today. Today is clearly a very significant day, and I especially appreciate your taking time out of your very busy schedule to spend a little bit of time with me and talking about public lands. We're so fortunate at UCSB to have a fabulous public land heritage all around us. And I am going to be sharing a little PowerPoint presentation with you, and then we'll be going into a website that I had the joy of putting together earlier this year, specifically for UCSB students, their families, you, their parents, you, to understand and appreciate, and especially to benefit from the fabulous public lands all around the UCSB campus. And so let's begin with the chat today. And as Fatima said, I very much look forward to hearing your questions when we're done going through some of these slides. So I'm going to begin today by telling you a little bit more about myself. And then I'll just be mentioning the fact that public lands surround UCSB, enriching very much the university experience for students and visitors. Then I will be exploring in a little more depth the very significant benefits that have been documented through scientific studies of being outdoors and in our public lands. I think that's wonderful for all of us to remember, and I think you'll be impressed by the documentation associated with the benefits associated with public lands. And then we'll be exploring the website, which I hope you will not only enjoy today, but subsequently, and share with your students and the rest of your family members when you come visit. So this is me in front of, as I'm sure you all know, Yosemite National Park. I have been fortunate to be associated with and involved in public lands since I was very young. My parents loved to explore public lands. I was involved with the conservation movement from an early age. I started my high school ecology club at San Fernando Valley and went on and pursued, in essence, environmental studies undergraduate. I went to Harvard Law and was honored to start the Harvard Environmental Law Review. I was co-founded it with several other individuals, and that, of course, Law Review is thriving. I, after law school, became an attorney for the Department of Interior, worked with President Carter on the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, and then became an attorney for the National Park Service and Fish and Wildlife Service, both in DC, but also in Alaska, where I lived for 37 years. And during my tenure in Alaska, I was a presidential appointee with President Clinton. I was a special assistant for the Secretary of Interior for Alaska and oversaw the public lands in Alaska, which are over 50% of the public lands in the United States from an acreage perspective. Been the executive director of several NGOs, national in scope, and I now teach public lands and waters law and policy at UCSB. Relevant to today, I have also been serving for the last several months on the Biden Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee. And I mention that because it is relevant today. Today is a huge day, but I also want to emphasize something I think we all know, and that public lands are very bipartisan. The support for public lands is deep in our nation, and we all benefit from public lands. We are all owners of our public lands. And last year and this year, two of the most significant pieces of legislation that have passed out of Congress passed with large bipartisan support and involved expanding both funding for and wilderness designation and expansion of our protected public lands. So regardless of who is in power, we have made progress, particularly at the congressional level, on public lands. As I mentioned, public lands surround UCSB. Many of us think about the beaches, Cold Point and more, and wonderful experiences that one can have in public beaches, but it's so much more. And in my class, I point in every single direction, north, south, east, west, and in between, and identify public lands that are available to explore and appreciate all around us. And there are even very special public lands in Isla Vista, some of which are not as well known as you might expect. Isla Vista has gone out of its way to protect special areas, both open areas such as this, which we'll describe in a moment, as well as some historic areas. So living in Isla Vista and Goleta and Santa Barbara for students, there are public lands here and so many more public lands within 300 miles. And as I like to emphasize again and again, public lands means we are co-owners of them. I now want to just talk briefly about the documented benefits of being outdoors because, as I said, even I was surprised at how much science has gone into this. And these benefits are wonderful all the time, but they're especially valuable during such a thing as a pandemic or when we're facing a lot of stress. So studies have shown, and most of these involve students, interestingly enough, that being outdoors, being our public lands, improves immune function and reduces stress hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline. And as I said, many studies that have confirmed this, including those involving students. So improves immune function. How important is that during a COVID crisis? Similarly, it reduces inflammation and cytokine levels, which, as we know with COVID, that's one thing that goes crazy. Again, several studies, including those involving students. It increases self-esteem and mood. This was a multi-study analysis that I have referenced here, which looked at so many other analyses, and that this has significant mental health benefits. It improves short-term memory. How wonderful is that for students and all of us? You study something, you go out, you come back, and your short-term memory has been improved by being outdoors, up to and including 20% improvement in short-term memory. And this was a Michigan study involving students. I think we all know this. Psychologically enhances relaxation, and this is the mechanism for doing so, including lowering blood pressure. This also very important for students and all of us, increases ability to focus, helps with restoration, and as I said, like so many of these studies, involve students. Helps creative thinking and problem solving, something which, whatever age we are, is valuable, but particularly for students. And I also just want to report, I have the joy of teaching my public lands and waters class, law and policy, twice a year in the fall and summer. And I asked my students early on what public lands mean to them. And one of the main things they report is how public lands have been a place where they have built some of the most important and valuable and heartwarming family memories in their lives, and how it has improved the bonding of their family to be in public lands, which I mention that because one of the virtues of the website, which we're about to get into, is not only for students, but when you come and visit your students, go out and enjoy some of these public lands with them and help build more bonding and memories. And students will report repeatedly build self-reliance, promote self-discovery, renews, regenerates. A lot of these, of course, reflecting the science on this. Best ways to interact during a pandemic, and critical for mental and physical health. So, Coal Point Reserve, which of course is probably the closest public land, is just the beginning, although it's a wonderful beginning to explore. As I said, I created this website because when I got my students together at the beginning of each class, I'd say, how many of you have been exploring the public lands around here? And a lot of students would say, well, we don't know what they are. So I thought, hey, let's just put together a website that everyone can enjoy and gain all of these great benefits. And so this is a website where I curated 50 destinations within 300 miles. I want an emphasis on those closer to UCSB, places where students could walk and bike, and parents and families could visit on a short, visit. But I did go as far as 300 miles because I did want to include Yosemite, which many of my students identify as their most important public land to them. I want on the website to include not only natural areas, but also cultural public land areas and built environments that are on public land. So a full spectrum of public lands and every kind, federal, state, and local. So I am going to now, this is the website, 50greatpubliclanddestinations.org. And now we will go explore the website a little bit. All right, so it highlights a lot of photos, which my husband and I took for the most part, but also several students have contributed their photos, which has been fabulous. If you saw that wonderful picture of the condor, that was taken by one of my star students at Pinnacles National Park. I have the home search page, which we're on now, which we'll go over next. And then these others, I'm going to highlight just the home search page, help protect, and then contact us. So underneath this picture is this. And basically, I wanted to make this very accessible. And so you can search for public lands using any of these 4 means. And the first is browse by all destinations, because I thought, let's just put all 50 destinations here. And as you can see, they're in alphabetical order. And let's say you wanted to go down to Santa Barbara, and besides having a nice meal down in downtown Santa Barbara, right next to downtown is this wonderful Alice Keck Memorial Garden. And so I've highlighted some photos where you can find it, who manages it, the website if you want to know more about it, how far it is from UCSB, the way you can get there. In this case, you can bike, walk, drive, bus, nice long walk, but some students might want to do it. Things to do, fun facts, other information, nearby public lands worth visiting. When I decided I really wanted to curate 50, I realized there are a lot of other places that are also worth visiting. And especially if they were nearby, I threw those in, like Alameda Park. Best time to visit, and some more photos. So that's what you will find on each of the sites. And again, they go through all of these alphabetically. And so going back to home, The other ways is you can search by distance, so you and your students can say, oh, you know, let's stay within 5 miles or less, or you can go larger distances to see what falls within those categories. And if you hit it like 5 miles or less and hit search, then it will list the public lands and that will be identified that are 5 miles or less. And again, a nice variety of the things we talked about before. Another way you can visit is, as you can see, a bubble map, and which can be expanded obviously to show. So depending on where you might like to go, like maybe you want to all head down to Los Angeles, what are public lands near LA? You want to go a little north, and so the bubble map can get you there. And the last way you can find where you might want to go is you can say, okay, we need public land with accessible features. We maybe like to do some bird watching, and maybe we're interested in picnicking. And so you can search by that, and it will bring up the public lands that fit those criteria. So again, wanted to make this as accessible and positive for everyone involved. There's overview, which hopefully you'll have the opportunity to explore, but I also want to talk about help protect, because my students have often said, what can I do to help protect public lands? And so I spent a lot of time talking about letting your voice be heard, about joining and contributing into organizations that are NGOs that are focused on protecting public lands, not only get the best information about what's going on in the public lands that they're involved in, but also to have the opportunity to volunteer with them. And so, we've identified all of this, but one area that a lot of students are particularly interested in is just getting their hands dirty. And helping plant and maintain, a great way to let off steam, to go out there and remove invasive species or plant trees or, do other maintenance or wonderful activities. And so, if your students ever ask you or ever say, I'm bored or looking more to do, you can direct them to this. But this is just some of the groups that do everything from creek cleanups to trail maintenance to planting trees. And so I just wanted to identify that so you could share that with your students. The final item is contact us. As you read through this, if you want to make any comments, I look forward to comments. Other areas that you think really should be included in this, or any updates, or if there are photos that you have that you think would enhance this, I would be delighted to hear from you. And so that's a very quick overview of the website. I really hope that you will enjoy using it, that your students will enjoy using it, and I'd be delighted to answer your questions.
Great, thanks Deborah for sharing, so exciting. So we do have some questions that are coming in, and I'll start off just with the first one. A very simple one. What are your favorite areas near campus?
That is a good one. I think I really like Camino Corto open space. It's the most natural area near campus in terms of walking. It's in Isla Vista. You can go there, you can be surrounded by trees and a creek. You can also go look at thermal pools, which are very exciting in the spring. There's lots of wildlife there, and for me, it's the most natural and the most restful. But I also love Sea Lookout Park. That was the one with the beautiful architecture in it. A very famous architect in Los Angeles designed that. You'll see students doing yoga there, also other activities. It's a wonderful place where built environment, a very architecturally in tuned environment meets the sea. My students, I think they love Dinosaur Park, and they love to go there and study, and so those are all special. And then there's Coal Point. Anyway, I mean, just right next to Ivy. It's so close. One thing I didn't mention is I am actually on the Goleta Parks and Recreation Commission. So I love Elwood Mesa. I love Lake, um, oh my gosh. I love Lake Cachuma, which I've just been teaching my students about, but I also love a lake that is part of Goleta Parks and Recreation. But there's just so many wonderful places to explore. And one thing I would recommend, if you can, if we get a fair amount of rain this winter, one time I encourage you to come visit your students is if we have super blooms and take them out. You saw the poppy pictures a lot. Take them out to the Antelope Valley State Poppy Reserve, or take them out to, you know, the BLM National Monument, which when it's in full bloom can be seen from space, or go down to Anza Borrego. And so have that as a really good opportunity to come visit your students and go visit, you know, some of the most spectacular public lands imaginable.
Wow, so many. Thank you. Someone else asks, does the website provide any updates on closure? So just recently, due to fire danger, there were some trails that were closed. And so are those updates listed on the website as well?
Yes, if it is a major closure on the top, if the whole park is closed, on the top, there'll be this park is closed due to fire, whatever. If I do not do, you know, smaller closures, and we didn't go over how to use the website, but one thing I do recommend is that people always click on the website for the public lands that you are hoping to visit. And as you saw, the website link was on each of the pages for that particular public land, to make sure if, you know, there's one, you know, trail you really want to visit or something, that is open. But if it's a complete closure it's on, it, you know, there was a time where 20% of all of the public lands that I had on site were closed because of the fires. And it was always joyous to take off those complete closures. There's still a couple, of course, that still are. Big Basin still is, right? And that is the oldest state park in our wonderful state. I should note, 45% of California is in federal public land ownership, meaning we all own and can enjoy 45% of California being in public lands. And there are several other more percentages that you add to that are in state and local. So it's over 50% of all lands in California are owned by us, and which we can go visit and enjoy. So that is a really exciting fact. And you know, a lot of California students take that for granted. I do have students from New Jersey or, you know, Illinois, and they're just astounded by our public land opportunities and heritage.
So there's a parent that asks, can you share some ideas of how to incentivize kids to get outdoors, either college aged, or in this particular example, they also have an eighth grader. How do we teach our students to be appreciative and enjoy the public lands that we have around us?
Several ways. For younger people, younger children, the best way is to go out with them, right? Enjoy it. And that is what I hear from my students again and again and again, and from other people. They will talk again and again about their family experiences getting out. And when you normalize getting out, you know, to your local parks, to, you know, more ambitious expeditions, then it just becomes part of, you know, who that person is, who that young person is. And they learn all of those benefits that science shows, you know, happens. And make it obviously as enjoyable and, you know, reducing the stress. Sometimes, you know, you'll see parents out there and they're so nervous, like, oh, be afraid of the snakes, be afraid of, you know, ticks, be afraid of this. And you can just see it. Those, you know, the studies that show that cortisol and everything else reduces when you're outside probably is not the case if you're, you know, excited or we're excited or nervous. It's just be in public lands where you can really relax and enjoy, and your children will know that. For students, same thing, right? You can share, because this PowerPoint is going to be available. Is that right, Fatima?
If they email parent@ia.ucsb.edu, yes, we can get it to those folks.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
That'd be great. You can share this PowerPoint. You can share those science scientific, studies, and for your student in college, say, look at look at the wonderful benefits. Also, what I find is it is one of the best ways for students to make friendship and socialize, particularly during a pandemic, because you can be outside, you can be 6 feet away, and you can have an experience. And that's what my current students are reporting, that the best interactions they're having, the best and safest interactions they're having are outdoors. They're out in the public lands. And so, it is a wonderful social opportunity right now. It always is, but especially during a pandemic. And when you come visit, take your students out to some of the public land, show them where they are, and hopefully the website will also they'll go, okay, I can walk to that.
Yeah, it's accessible. So to your point, there's a parent PK who asks, are you aware of any student clubs or organizations that are using either the website or gather together when they can and it's safe?
Yes.
They're also talking
Yes.
about mental health, right? Like, are there organizations on campus at UCSB that a student can eventually get involved with when they're back
Yes.
on campus?
There are. There is an outdoor club at UCSB. That's really good, and I should put that on the website. So thank you. If you'd written that in a comment, I went, yeah, really good. I actually added a lot to this website based on comments. But they are. I don't know if they're active right now because they organize, at least 1 or 2 trips, to Montana de Oro State Park or to Yosemite and to Death Valley. They're also, UCSB actually offers trips too, and those are linked on the website on how to get there. And one option is if UCSB has historically done a trip there. Of course, they're not doing that as much right now. Hopefully that will resume in the spring, which would be appropriate anyway. And I'll kind of keep that updated. So have your students watch for that, hook into the outdoor club, but I will now put that, I'll put the links on. Because there are a lot of students that love to be outdoors at UCSB. And again, a great way to make relationships. I think it's the best way of being outdoors. And one thing I teach and teach and teach again is the key to happiness and success in life is building relationships. It really is. So it is a great way.
Yeah, I'll also just mention to our parents that it's through the Recreation Center. It's called Adventure Programs. They're the folks that put together trips, as Deborah was saying. They go to the islands, they go to some of our national parks. And so, again, that's Adventure Programs through the Recreation Center at UCSB. So that's something that, as parents, maybe you can encourage your students to take part again when they're back on campus.
And they do those trips during breaks. So it's a perfect way, between quarters. And so it's really a perfect way for students to, again, build those relationships, have great experiences.
Perfect. Another question, Deborah, is you mentioned that you teach an undergraduate class. Can you just tell us the name of that class again and kind of what the syllabus looks like for that class?
Right. I teach public lands, law, and policy. And I teach it in the fall and in the summer, first session in the summer. It's a very rigorous class. And I tell my students up front, this is a really rigorous class. And this is a real world class. As you could glean from describing my background, I spent my career in the real world. And so I bring real world sensibilities to the class, including expectations. And also being a graduate of Harvard Law, I say, I'm going to use some of the teaching strategies that they use at Harvard Law. I want you guys to learn a lot in this class. So we go we use a fabulous textbook called America's Public Lands. I actually have it here. by Randall Wilson. Wonderful, wonderful textbook. A lot of students say it's the best textbook they've had. And we go through all the kinds of, we go through the history of public lands, emphasizing that public lands is critical to the creation of our nation. And the Articles of Confederation would not have been signed unless the colonists agreed to put into public land ownership all of the land between the the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River. And so, and that we were really the first country to have public lands, of course, the first country to have a national park, the first country to designate wilderness and so forth. So we go through a lot of law. They read a Supreme Court case, they read legislation, they read executive orders, but we have a lot of fun. And then they do mock congressional testimony. And so I've been fortunate to testify in front of Congress about 20 times. And so they each do mock, they pick a topic and we do mock congressional testimony. It's a great class and students really love it.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. So I'm just gonna mention that there are a lot of comments that just say, thank you, the site is amazing. You know, please make sure that you share it with all UCSB parents in the local Santa Barbara community. So a lot of just feedback of saying thank you for putting it together. They've, really appreciate it. But just, yeah, and just being mindful of time, I think I'll ask this final question, Deborah, is you teach in environmental studies, but any suggestion of other fields of study that UCSB undergrads could either look into taking a class or maybe even minoring or majoring in if there's this interest in either enjoying public lands or protecting public lands?
Some of my best students have been majors in political science and psychology. And I've even had, I've had 2 star students who majored in dance with a minor in environmental studies. And so, I have actually had fabulous students who majored in biology. My major that I sort of created, I went to Pomona College in the Claremont complex. I actually created my own major, but it was mostly biology, economics, and political science, with an emphasis figuring those are the 3 things that you really need to know to have an impact on public lands and the environment. So there are many routes to get there to be effective. And of course, if you're interested in international environmental issues, that's also an important route. So you don't have to be an environmental studies major. You can certainly be one of the other majors to have a successful career in this area. But I do recommend all students that want to do this to take some biology, some other science, a little bit of economics and political science and mix it all up. But the environmental studies major itself is fabulous. But all of these perspectives are really important to protect our public land heritage. 640 million acres in the United States are in public land ownership. And then we also in class go offshore, over 2.8 billion acres of submerged lands that are public lands and the ocean above them. So it's one of our greatest, obviously, shared legacies.
Absolutely. And I'll just say that the great thing about UC Santa Barbara is there's a lot of opportunity for interdisciplinary study. And so all of the majors that you mentioned are within the College of Letters and Science. And so if for our parents that are listening today, you have, and even if they're not in the College of Letters and Science, but there's a lot of opportunity to whether you're, as Deborah mentioned, you may be a dance major, but you're minoring in environmental studies. Campus really supports that. So make sure that you encourage your students to follow their passion, because if they're passionate about it, they're going to want to do good work and move on to bigger and better. So that's definitely something that students that choose UC Santa Barbara made a good choice.
They made a very good choice.
Yeah. Well, this concludes our webinar. Thank you again so much to all of our parents and family and loved ones for joining us today. And of course, thank you so much to Deborah for taking the time today to talk about your passion and to share the website. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be going to the website as a resource, so we really appreciate it. I'll just mention that next week, our registered families are going to be receiving a survey via email, and we'd really appreciate your comments and your feedback. And you can also, if you need the access to Deborah's presentation today, respond to that email, and we'll make sure to get it to those folks that are looking for that. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. Stay safe and take care.
And enjoy your public lands.